Welcome to another show of Celebrate Life. My name is Gary Carolis, and I am your host. The focus of this program, as many of you know, is to show the amazing lives that people live and are living. The key word here is live. Everyone has a story to tell. All stories are worth celebrating. Over the years, I've read too many obituaries that left me pondering, I wish I could have met that person while they were alive. The intent of this program is to celebrate the lives of everyday Vermonters who are all very much alive. If you would like to be a guest on this show or know someone who would like to be a guest, please contact me at celebratelife0747@gmail.com. Now, I would like to introduce you to Mary Streeter. Welcome, Mary.
Well, thanks for having me.
Oh, good to have you on the show. Yeah. So, let's celebrate your life today.
Okay.
All right. So where would you like to start?
Okay. Well, we were just reflecting. We're here in Vermont in the middle of the winter. It's a little harder, I think, at this point in life for me to get ambitious to go out, but I still do. But when I think of my life as a kid that grew up in Underhill, Vermont, at the base of Mount Mansfield, I'm the youngest of 5 girls, and we spent most of our winters at the Underhill Ski Bowl.
Wow.
Yeah, it was, it's no longer open because I think it was hard to keep it viable, but boy, it made up a huge part of my childhood.
Wow.
And yeah, I have so many wonderful memories and hard memories of being cold and stuck in the woods with my skis wrapped around trees. But, when I look back, and I guess I'll just start back there, is that, I just grew up in such a beautiful place with so much freedom in my community and safety to be able to explore, and I think it helped my resiliency too, because there was just enough, I think, of ability to let us roam.
Absolutely.
And be, because everyone knew everyone.
Yeah.
I knew that all the other kids there, we took turns helping out like in the snack bar, and it just was a community where everyone was sort of looking out for everyone else.
And the school is small, I would think, right?
The Underhill Central School was small. I don't know, I'm not good at numbers, but when it comes to like conceptualizing that, but there was only one classroom for each age, and there was probably, I don't know, 20 kids maybe in each one, and I have my fondest memories of those years there.
Did you have a special teacher?
So the principal of our school, who was Al Paisel, was not only our principal, but he played soccer with us every day. He taught my friend Annie Tomasi and I how to play the trumpet.
Wow,
in second grade. Yeah.
What a principal.
I know. He was just amazing, and he taught science. But I know, I remember, like, I was reflecting on this and thinking, the first song he taught us was, I don't know if this is the name of it, but it was like Trailer for Sale or Rent. Do you remember that song?
Oh, yeah.
Which is probably not a typical second grade song, but...
Miller.
Al Miller. Was Al Miller?
I can't remember his first name.
But a lot of kind of jazzy, those kind of songs. So it was small, and I know, I remember, like, I don't know, our hot lunch lady, Mrs. Pryor, and then moms would come in. At that time it was moms. It would be moms and dads probably now, would come in to help out, and just that. So much art. I had a lot of art and creativity in those years, and I think that, that really shaped me a lot in, not only in my curiosity around that and creation, but I also just felt, and I realized I thought that all things were possible,
Which is what you want a child to have, that I can do whatever I want to do in life.
Yeah,
right? Oh, my goodness, very empowering.
It really was. I mean, I didn't have a lens to the bigger world. We didn't have social media or computers.
Right.
We were just watching some local TV once in a while. But I realized that by having that tight community, a lot of my mentors were within that, like my teachers.
Yes.
Or, honestly, I have 4 older sisters. I still have 4 older sisters, and I really looked up, to them. A couple of them more than others I would look to. And the other thing, I think sports were a big part of my youth, and I've just always been athletic, and so I think I looked more towards those upperclassmen in the sports teams and felt inspired by that.
Right.
And eventually got a chance to leave Vermont and play, in different arenas.
Did you?
But
Yeah.
but I think, it wasn't like I didn't have that exposure to the broader world as I later did global health and have done that kind of work. But I think that strong foundation of I don't know, knowing who I was a little bit and being able to be out in the world in a safe way. And nature was a big teacher for me too. Yeah.
It sounds like curiosity too was a part of that early life, that you could just explore, whether it's Underhill or the hill, or nature or whatever.
Yeah. And I still think to today, when life feels a little overwhelming and I kind of lose that connection with myself and my truth at times, I always just need to go for a walk in the woods, and I feel like nature mirrors to us everything we really need to know.
Yeah, I would agree.
And feel, right?
Yeah.
And I think we just try to recreate that through our art and everything else that we do through that lens. It's interesting.
That makes Vermont a very special place in many ways, because nature is so close to us, and you never get too far away from it. Even in a city like Burlington, you can find that solace close by.
Yeah, I know. I think we're fortunate in that way, and I wish that for everyone. I know not everyone has that capability, so we have other ways in which we can do it. Yeah.
So 5 sisters. Wow.
Yeah.
As a family, did you travel much?
We didn't travel a lot. We had one big trip. I was in 2nd grade where we traveled. My grandparents, who lived in Dorset, Vermont, in southern Vermont, they would go to Arizona in the winter towards the later years of their life. And we always made the trip to Dorset quite regularly, and that's a big part of my memory. There was a marble quarry there.
Oh yes,
there were many marble quarries, and the sidewalks were of marble, but we'd go swim in the quarry, and I spent a lot of time. I would live for that. I lived for swimming, actually. I just loved being in the water for hours. Most of my sisters and I did. But anyway, so we took this big trip to out west, and we had a Volkswagen bus, just like you would think of in the 70s, that didn't start well. I just remember, I think we left here, it was probably school vacation, so probably in February, and we loaded that up, and I remember my mom had this, we had this orange cooler of tuna fish sandwiches of all things for as we took off, and we couldn't quite get the slider door shut. I remember that, and it was cold, and we left here and then headed out, and how brave of them with 5 children and a pretty unreliable vehicle, I would say. My mom worked nights as a nurse for a while, and I remember getting up and sort of pushing it off the hill, because we lived up on a hill, to get it started, to like jump start it.
Stick shift.
Yeah, and we did that a couple times on our way to Arizona too. But that was a big trip. I think it was like 4 days out or back, I forget what, but I just remember like picking cotton in cotton fields. Like this was all just a new exposure, my first real exposure to the bigger world, and just the different climate and soil and the desert and the flowers in the desert, and picking oranges off trees, something we don't do in Vermont. Right. So that kind of opened, I think, a window for me of the broader world, and grew my curiosity, I think, around that.
Interesting.
Yeah, which, led me in later years to have that desire to do the work that I did in Africa. Yeah.
You've had some nice foundational experiences.
I really feel very fortunate, about where I grew up, and also, like, I have to talk about my mom a little, because she was such a good, my dad also, like, such a hard worker, and then when he wasn't working, he was a carpenter, and I definitely, like, spent some time in the summers working with him. And then he'd be on committees, like, for the town.
Right.
And my mom, we all, like, our house might have not have been the best kept house, and our meals weren't, she was not a chef, for sure. Lots of interesting greens and things always on the stove, which I later came to appreciate. But that's because she was always out in the community helping others,
Wow.
you know, and they really set that up for us, you know, whether we were helping at through our local church or like helping at school functions and or she always did Meals on Wheels and brought us along. Well, she took a group of men with special needs to bingo every week and just always, I think my mom was always caring for the community as much as anything else, yeah.
Wow.
And so at her funeral, I remember people coming up to me and saying, oh, you know, because after the service, a lot of people reflected on who she was to them. And they're like, wow, I just thought it was me. Like, you know, she made me feel so special. And so I grew up in that. And so I think with that strength and that outward importance of community and connection, that they set that strong foundation, which she was a nurse. I became a healthcare worker. Not that I thought I was going to, but yeah, I think she set a lot of, they both set a lot of really good
Beautiful
examples.
example, yeah.
And my sisters and I are like so close, and I realized as we got out in the world, that's not the truth for everyone. So they also did something right there. Yeah.
So what was high school years like for you?
High school was, so I worked hard as a student and an athlete. That became important to me. I would say I went through what a lot of kids probably go through in middle school as you're trying to find your way and growing up out of this small Underhill. When we went on to middle school, it combined a couple towns, and then high school, multiple towns in Chittenden County, right? And, you know, I really enjoyed school. And you know, at some point you realize, like, this magical place I came from, I needed some other skills to survive in the world and be successful in which the way we define it. And I will say, like, I had a defining point in middle school, I think, where, like, there was a little bit of abandoning of my youthful self to show up in the world as I thought everyone needed me to be seen and successful and feel okay about myself. And I think that is not an unusual thing. And the work I do now really is like realigning with our truth and who we are when we layer up out in the world to show up as the world wants us to.
So you mean, so here's this little girl who's starting to grow up, middle school age, which is a tough period of time for.
Wouldn't ever want to redo that. Any kid I've raised, I don't think would want to redo that.
So then, at some point, you decided that I need to be somebody within this world that I'm in, this middle school world. And
to me, that was like, it's not the truth of who it is. I just think, and I know I've already said how wonderful my parents are, but I think, you know, we try to protect our kids from as much struggle as we can. So we often like conform to what the norm is to try to make them feel like they have a sense of belonging, right, and are successful without it being spoken that clearly. When I reflect back, like there were certain things that happened within my life, and maybe it's divine intervention too, I don't know, but that just steered me, and who I am was like, oh, well, I need to be, I'm a tall person, so I felt big in a world that wanted women to be small and quiet. And I wasn't either of those things, right? So I kind of, as many girls do, go through a period of the diet culture and making myself really thin. And then I just became a really good student, a good athlete, and so, that was, and I look back at that time and I realize, you know, I had some sadness I had to heal around that, and some clarity. And I think it happened as I went on in adulthood and built my family and my life to arrive at a place of success, the home, the family, the good jobs, to realize that's not necessarily happiness. Right? And that's when I began to do my work about who am I, what does make me happy, what am I doing in my life that is important, and what is just a checklist of what I've been doing. So I've been kind of living
Interesting.
doing my life but not being in it.
Yeah,
right?
you're becoming real
Yeah.
for yourself.
Yeah. But I
This
see
is-
that sort of happened in that trajectory.
Right.
Yeah.
If you were to reflect back to that time in middle school
Yeah.
and could offer some sage wisdom, having gone through the whole, which most kids do go through that, could we do it differently? What would that
Yeah.
look like? How could we stay true to ourselves at a young age when we're hardly aware of who we are?
So hard. And
It is.
I'm going to jump ahead, but I have 3 children I've raised, and then I have 4 grandchildren I'm raising, due to my daughter's struggle with addiction. And we can touch on that because I have a few
Yes.
things I could share about that. So I've had a lot of chance to sort of like shepherd children through these stages. And I've seen the difference in the 2 generations that I've raised. And this one, I have a middle school girl right now, a 12-year-old, plus 3 high school boys. And I would just say, like, the influences are so big with social media.
Yeah.
And that's a whole thing that I'm sort of trying to guide that I didn't with my younger children. But I think part of what I've really tried to guide them through is this sense of worthiness and normalize what they're going through. Because I think my journey has been that whenever I feel like I'm an anomaly or I'm going through something really hard and I feel shame maybe around it, I have come to realize if I'm going through this, there's a million other people going through this.
True.
So I think part of it is identifying the struggle for what it is. I think,
Right.
there's one thing, and I don't know if you can even hear it as a kid, but if we know that struggle is just part of the journey, discomfort is part of the journey, then we can talk about it, and not think we're doing something wrong or there's something to be fixed.
Right.
So I
Right.
do think that what's happening now is a lot more language, a lot more communication, around normalizing some of the things that weren't in my generation. So I do think that's better. I mean, I think we have a whole nother set of things going on. But one thing I definitely have done with my grandchildren, which I'm not really sure I even did with my kids, was just to name the things. And I think having a daughter, their mom in struggle, and knowing the pain we were sharing around that,
Yeah.
to realize at times that I was really sad, and to just acknowledge to
Yeah.
them, like, this feels really hard, my heart
Yeah.
really hurts right now.
Yeah.
And then it gave them an opportunity to also say, yeah, me too, or just to cry, right? To let
And
a little
it's
air
okay.
out of their tire, and it's okay.
Yeah,
It's
right.
okay that we feel the way that we do. And I think that's the best thing we can do for our kids, is to say, yeah, I remember that, or yeah, it's so uncomfortable being in your skin at that age, right? Like, or just, I hear you, you know?
And I'm wondering if our schools don't do enough of that as part of the education of a child, is what we used to call affective education, where you talk about feelings and you talk about that they're okay to have,
Yeah.
and that by expressing those you can move through them. And
Yeah. I mean, I think there's 2 things I see the school doing that weren't done before. One is they have these advisory groups that mix different ages together, and I think that is helpful because it gives some mentorship. I still think in a school environment it's really hard for kids to be open and honest about how they're feeling, but I do think they hold more opportunity for that. The other thing that as a mindfulness proponent, I am seeing in the classrooms at a young age is giving the kids tools like
Yes,
mindfulness.
that's right.
And that did not exist right before.
Yeah.
And so, I say, like, what I have learned, one of the things I've learned is that we all need a toolkit. We all are in
Exactly.
recovery from something, right? Or just from being human.
Yeah.
And we need ways to be able to ground and center and calm our nervous system so that we can sort of move forward from this place of awareness.
Right.
We can't stop the events that unfold in our life, but we can choose how to be with them,
That's right.
right? And
That's
by
right.
giving kids this skill, then they can come from a place of fundamental awareness and not from reactivity,
That's right.
which is what our world is sort of asking us to do all the time with our overstimulation.
Right.
So I think there is
You're
a lot.
seeing-
I
you're
think there's a
seeing it.
lot that's good. I still think it's really hard, and we have a long way to go.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, that's good.
yeah. But I'm hopeful. I'm a
Mm-hmm.
perpetual optimist, I guess. One of my favorite sayings is I don't know if you've read Jane Goodall's book of Hope.
No.
You know Jane Goodall.
Yes.
She worked,
Oh, yes.
And one of my big takeaways from that book was that she said, you know, people define hope as seeing light in the darkness, but she said you have to put action to that light, right? So you had to move it, and so that's what I think about. It's great to see it, but we have to be actionable in our life.
Something
Yeah,
like that, yes.
yeah. So
Wow.
I like that. Yeah.
So you talked about your athletics in
Yeah.
high school. And
Yeah.
What did you do?
Well, basketball was my thing.
basketball,
Yeah. I really loved soccer. I grew up playing soccer, but you know they didn't have girls soccer when I started high school, and middle school. So I played field hockey, basketball, and softball.
Okay.
But basketball was what I really accelerated at, and I got to go. I would go to the Poconos in the summer and play, and
Wow.
yeah, that was a place for me. And I went on and continued to play even in my adulthood on the Burlington Women's League for a lot of years. And I don't know, getting on a court and athletics for me, and people do this through their creative outlets, you know, it's a way for life to fall away and for you to just be in that moment, you know. And I found that even as an adult, it was such a great outlet for me, and it, you know, made me feel like a kid again. And
Absolutely.
you know, which is how I feel when I'm out romping around in the woods too, or I
Yep.
do cold dipping. I like to go into the woods in the winter and get in these cold streams of Vermont, and
Yep.
I've started doing that. I like adventure, you know.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's what keeps me curious and engaged in life.
That's great.
Yeah. So.
Did your teams do well?
Yeah. I mean, I think I was really inspired by the years ahead of me that my sister Jenny was on some state champ teams. Ours didn't quite go there. But I always made the all-state teams. Yeah, so that was always, you know, it's something I felt good about, built my confidence, and.
There's something, team sports, there's a lot of life lessons learned through them.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
Cooperation.
Yep.
Competition, and
Yep.
yeah.
And that sense of belonging.
And part of something, right?
Yeah, yeah. I do have a son, he's 27, that played a lot of sports, and you know, he's 6'6", so he was certainly encouraged to play basketball, and he was a good basketball player, but he wasn't the best. But he just loved being on teams, you know, and I just admired that in him, that he didn't have to actually be the best or push to excel necessarily.
Right.
He just really loved being a teammate, you know, and I think, I mean, that's a human need, is that sense of belonging, right? So I think, you know, even as we grow, and you know, I work with people in recovery, I mean, part of it is that you need a community that gives you a sense of belonging and shared understanding, right?
Acceptance. And,
Exactly.
exactly.
That you can be honest and be who you are with.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have come to know that as vital energy, that we all need, life energy.
I mean, your point's well. I mean, the enemy of recovery is isolation, and that's what COVID really accentuated, right?
Yeah.
And so that sense of belonging to something, hopefully in a positive way, is manna from heaven.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Yeah. I've seen with my daughter that's in struggle. She hasn't yet built that community outside of her substance use, and so even the times that she's been in recovery, you know, and I now see clearly that if you don't have that, then it's going to be really hard, you know, to be successful.
We call it recovery capital. It's like your investment in yourself is your friends around you.
Yeah.
So when the tough times come, you can lean a little bit on A or B.
Yeah. I mean, that's been a huge lesson for me to walk beside and to sort of, you know, it's been 12 years and we've had her children. She's currently incarcerated and getting out soon, but it's been a few years, and I'm hopeful, but I also know how important that transition is. And I think, I guess from, you know, I only have my side of the story to tell, and that is, as a mother, that it's so hard to separate enabling from loving, especially early on. It is really hard, and so I do have a lot of mothers. Once I've shared our story, I've written it and I've talked about it, and I have a podcast called Zen Mom in the Attic that my daughter and I had started together, just talking with people in recovery and what got them there and what kept them there, and you know,
That's
it's
wonderful.
interesting. Yeah,
What's the name of it again?
it started out as Zen Mama in the Attic.
Zen Mom in the Attic?
Yeah, and Caitlin and I started it, and then she fell a few months in, and I continued through that lens for a little while, and then I changed it to Zen Mama and Everyday Gurus. So it's people finding meaning and purpose, not despite their struggles, but likely because of them, and sort of shining the light on the path for others. And it's been wonderful for me to have those conversations. And also, you know, I just admire people that are living all different kinds of life, but they're, you know, the ones that are really finding such joy in them and really understanding what's at the root of that.
Right.
You know,
Right.
as we talk about hope and
Right.
belonging and meaning and purpose. But I did, for everyone that I've really interviewed in recovery, it did feel like spirituality was a very big component of their healing and their turning point of staying on their path. Yeah. So, but that journey has taught me a lot about how to walk beside someone and how to also understand the disease of addiction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I bet.
Yeah. And then, you know, I guess I've just wanted to bring a voice to the people walking beside it because it affects the fabric of a family quite deeply. Yeah.
I found that, and I'd like to hear what your thoughts are, that the folks that I know in recovery are some of the most self-aware, deeply committed to who they are and what they're all about, as a way of arming themselves against the world, in a sense, that when they bump up against some external things that could trigger them to want to use again, that those parts of themselves that they've come to know and love are the things that keep them centered and focused and moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think if the whole world was like that, it would be a much better place to live in.
100%. I had the privilege of helping to design and open up a treatment center in Stowe called Sana that I became the Wellness and Integrative Health Director at. And for me, I worked in radiology for years, well, 38 years. And about 10 years into that, realized this, I'm on a sideline, but I'll bring it back, how broken our healthcare system was. And I had gone back to school at that point with curiosity about, like, I didn't know even if I wanted to work in healthcare anymore. And I took an integrative health course at Johnston State College at that time. And it really was about, you know, Eastern and Western medicine, right? And it gave me hope. It really gave me hope that we had this whole other lens of healing that we weren't including in our Western medical model. And so I continued to work in radiology, but brought in a lot of those practices because I used them in my life, and I would use them with my patients, whether it was breath work or mindfulness or just like, well, have you tried taking turmeric, or different approaches to their inflammation? But anyway, when I was asked to go up when they were beginning to open the center and maybe do some meditation, I ended up just seeing the potential. They had the clinical and medical model to bring in wellness as this wraparound to give people sustainable healing and access to their inner wisdom and knowing and the tools that we have in these amazing vessels that we've been gifted to live in. Because I think we've only begun to tap into the potential of who and what we have within us. And both physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, energetically. And so so that was a beautiful place to be able to watch this amazing transformation that would happen with people that would come in for residential treatment and get the, you know, the medical detox, medically guided detox, get the clinical therapeutic work, and then also be receiving some yoga and breath work and massage and Reiki, and so that they were awakening these parts of themselves that they had never known.
Right.
I had I do energy work and and teach yoga. And I just had people receiving energy work that were kind of like, sure, I'll try it. And they'd come out of that session like, almost like, I don't know what just happened, but it feels really good, you know, and it would ignite this hope in them. So just to, I think, experience that is hopeful.
Wow,
To know that you
yeah.
can touch on something. And that's sort of, so I did have the opportunity to do that. And that, I kind of forgot where we started. I said I was going to circle it back, but.
No, it's okay. So the tool, I mean, we talked about a toolkit
Yeah.
at some point, and it sounds like you're the person that will help you fill your toolkit.
Yeah, I mean, that's essentially what I was doing there,
Right.
was like, you already have, first of all, it's like you already have tools. We all already have tools. We're here, we're resilient.
Yeah.
So identifying what are the gifts I already have, and
Yeah.
then like, let's expose to a few more. What
Yeah.
else do you like? What
Yeah.
aligns, what works for you?
Yeah.
And then like, that's where I became a coach a little bit too. Like, let's put this into a plan. It's one thing to know what we need to do. It's another thing to do it. And sort of
Right.
setting ourselves up with intentions for our day, and a skeleton to hang all those things from. And yeah, I do, okay, now I know where I was going with this. I did, you know, I would say to them, because it became more and more aware to me, like, I don't know how this world works, but there's a lot of people struggling with addiction. And is this an opportunity? Like, are you, like, you know, and I would say this in an empowering way to them, like,
Yeah.
if you figure this out, like, you're a modern day hero. Like, we need people like you to guide us, because we're kind of messy, and
Yeah.
everyone's struggling. Like, these people had substance use disorders, but man, everybody's addicted to something. Our attention's being hacked, you know,
Exactly.
whether it's our phone or people pleasing or whatever it is.
Yeah.
We all need tools. And so having these wise souls, because they are, you
They
go
are
through
very wise
recovery,
souls.
you learn
Absolutely.
a lot. It's a great opportunity. I
Yes.
mean, it's not packaged the way we would like it to be,
Yeah.
but most of life isn't.
Yeah,
When we
exactly.
actually move through to a brighter light, right?
Yeah.
That becomes the opportunity. And that's sort of like shaped how I see people struggle, is not like as a sympathetic thing, but more as an opportunity, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those that seize it become amazing human beings.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you had this amazing foundation early in life.
Yeah.
That mentors, family, and then it sounds like life is, and we're going to test how strong that foundation is,
Yeah.
Mary Streeter.
For sure. And it happened a few times over. I'll have to say, like, so I had that middle school thing, and that kind of set me in a direction. And I'm grateful for that, because it did open a lot of opportunities for me, because I did excel at things in our school system, which is not always easy for kids. And then I met my husband of, I don't know, 40 years, I guess. I was 16 and at a graduation party. He was 19. But we met then and got married when I was actually in college at UVM, and we've been
nice.
together ever since. And so, you know, with him, I built a life based on the life that I saw, which was, you know, and we had a few children. He's also a contractor. We built our homes, and much like my dad did. And so we did these things. We had these dreams, and we were able to make them happen. And then, yeah, I reached a point that I was like, okay, my job in healthcare, it feels like we're in a broken system. I've built the home, I've done the things, and I feel a little depressed. You know, why X, Y, and Z should equal happiness, right? And that's when I found Jon Kabat-Zinn's book on full catastrophe living, which was really based in mindfulness. And he did the first work in healthcare around the relationships to stress and heart disease. And then brought in mindfulness yoga as recovery along with the surgery and the medicine, and people's outcomes were so much better, right, long term. And so I was interested in how can we bring this into our medical model, and, you know, certainly worked with different groups of people at UVM Medical Center to bring in mindfulness and to address burnout, and, you know, not only give our patient, and then I actually developed an app for patients to empower them about their healthcare experience. Again, the breath is like our superpower, and choice is the other one, right? And so, so I found ways to integrate it in there, and that felt great. I also had the opportunity to help do research and program development for a global health organization called Imaging the World. And through that lens of bringing ultrasound to rural villages in Africa. And that I traveled over there for about 10 years, several times a year, and brought students, and we taught them in rural villages how to, an ultrasound can be done on a very small device now. So, women die for preventable reasons in Africa for obstructed labor, and this was just giving them a window to five very preventable findings. And it's that work continues, and it's really beautiful, and I was grateful to be a part of that. And then as my 3 children grew, and then my daughter, after having her children, I kind of knew that their life was a little messy, but I was pretty naive to addiction at that time, and I was pretty busy with my life. But she fell hard to heroin, and we ended up overnight taking and fostering and then adopting her children, because they both fell hard, and it took them years to get it together. Yeah, so that stopped my travels, and that was my next, I'd say, big, unexpected. I mean, the other things that I hit were dissatisfaction with life. I'm going to look, what else is there? How do I work in the healthcare system and see hope? How do I build a life that I feel
It's meaningful.
and that was practicing mindfulness, and then deciding what belongs, what doesn't belong, and that really guided me for a while. But then the tsunami showed up, and suddenly I had 4 little kids, and my daughter was a heroin addict. I couldn't even say that out loud, and I couldn't hide it, because I suddenly had 4 kids in tow that I had to get into our school system and into daycare, literally overnight. I walked home one day, she was laying on the couch, I need help. I took her, and then she left the recovery center, and we didn't hear from her for a while. And it's been an unfolding journey from there. But that's really been my last 10 or 12 years is how to navigate that and to raise her children and find hope.
How's everybody doing?
Everyone's doing great. They were 1, 3, 5, and 7, and they're now 12, 15, 17, and almost 19. Yeah, so they're doing good. And my daughter has been in and out of recovery, but she's fallen pretty hard. But she seems really well, and she seems like she's gonna maybe come out with more tools than she had before and more intentions. So I hold as much hope as I'm allowing myself to have around that. As do they. They're amazingly resilient, and they've had this. They're regular kids, but they have a deeper or more. A greater chance, right? A greater risk of substance use disorder just because of what their parents do, right? Statistically.
Right.
So it's been a real opportunity for me to be really open and honest about my fears for them, and give them, Jessica Leahy, do you know her? No. Jessica Leahy wrote Addiction Inoculation. She's local, and a couple other books, and she just really talks about raising children, because she herself is a recovering alcoholic, I believe, and she has been raising children knowing that they have a greater risk, and she talks a lot about education, and that's sort of what I've done with my kids, and also empowered them that this is your life, this is your life.
I think you're allowing them to make a choice about whether they use alcohol or substances versus just flopping into it, and all of a sudden they're overwhelmed by it.
Yeah.
Just awareness.
It's awareness. I'm not going to say I haven't at times felt terrified for that.
Of course.
And me,
Absolutely.
I'm I don't know if I can go through this pain of watching someone you love so much struggle with something so hard. And I don't want that for any of them. But I also realize that's not within my control.
That's right.
Right? I can love them, inform them, tell them they're worthy of it, identify the pain that they're going through when they go through it, give them tools, and then,
Amazing.
Yeah, they're amazing. And I think we're here to evolve our souls. And I think I've been given a lot of opportunity to do that.
Yes.
Yeah, which has led to my work in that field.
So when you came to understand that you had, gone the way society wants one to go, and then came to that conclusion that you were feeling a little depressed, and this is not, there's got to be more to life than just following the path here.
The status quo.
Was there a moment, or what
What was that turning point?
Yeah, what was that turning point?
I mean, I really had a moment of sitting in my house alone, in this new beautiful house we designed and built, and felt what I felt inside, which was empty. And I was like, how can I have such a full life and feel so empty inside? And that began my curiosity.
Yes. Oh,
And then things happened, like I have an uncle who lived in Alaska who was definitely an alternative thinker and beer. And he happened to have cancer, and I think my son, this was right around the same time, and my mom wanted to go see him and needed someone to go with her, so I went. I'm like, sure, I'll be the good daughter and go. And this little fishing village that they lived in Chitina, Alaska, which is halfway between Fairbanks and Anchorage, you know, they had an outhouse. It was a very alternative lifestyle, but they lived their life real, very real. Like, you don't live in that small of a town. This was smaller than Underhill. You don't speak your truth and not live your truth. Right? Because it's too intimate there. And it's also dangerous, like, to live out in the wilds like that. And so, and just their perspective that they brought to me and their different way of thinking actually touched a part of myself of who I was that I hadn't had an opportunity. Even though my mom, you know, she would be barefoot sometimes at our events, and I never thought of that. She definitely, like, tried to stay in her truth amongst trying to conform to a certain degree. He was none of that. And he had this very eccentric wife from England, and she was an herbalist, and she talked to me about how she talked to the flowers, things that I was just like, okay, but also like rose my curiosity about things. And so people like that in my life, and honestly, that teacher I had for that wellness and alternative medicine course was calling out the truth on things I hadn't thought about, like our sugar industry, like our pharmaceutical industry, and this was a while back. And so it just began to open my eyes to, like, to the truth of things. And also, I'll say, even working in medicine, the closer I got to people I admired, the more disappointed I was with what the truth was versus how people were showing up just to fit into the academia. And I'll even say, like, as a woman in radiology in the late 80s, early 90s, I mean, I had to learn how to survive in that environment, which again was another abandonment of self. You know, you didn't talk about your family, you just showed up regardless of things, which has changed. Which has changed. And COVID helped even accelerate that, I think, a little bit. But, you know, it's just that generation that I grew up in, and you just put your best image forward, no matter what was happening in the backdrop of your life. And I mean, it's partly like the podcast, and I'm a writer as well, and I feel like it's really this whole imperfection of humans that we are. We are imperfect. We all are imperfect. And I think the more we can live into that truth, the more we can heal, and the more we can find contentment, if that's what joy is.
I would think today, finding yourself and truth within yourself is a harder task with all the social media stuff that's going on, to distract you from that.
Absolutely. It's so hard. I mean, I even find there's so many influencers as I go through different, and, you know, health and wellness is a big part of the work that I do and how I live. I sometimes have to step away and be like, okay, everybody's saying what is appropriate for postmenopausal, you know, hormonal therapy or exercise and diet, and it's like, oh, I have to really listen to me and who I am and what I need. You know, and that's where, to me, like, our biggest gift is coming into stillness and silence, and it's also one of the hardest things to do.
Hardest thing to do, right?
To unlayer all the layers that we've built up, but. one thing that really helps me is I do, through my yoga, I play the harmonium and chant kirtan. And that singing of repetition of mantras is one way to dust off the mirror of our heart, they say in yoga, to find our way back to that unconditional love of who we are.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
And all these things, right? Whether it's exercise or cold dipping or emotional freedom tapping, all
Yep,
these things are just ways to shake off those many layers.
To get down
Yeah.
to the core.
And also, I like to empower people to gather and harness their attention. Like, put your stake in the ground, like that's yours, and everybody's hijacking it. And I think this awareness, if we can continue to grow the awareness, then we can begin to respond to it.
Yes.
But when we're just swept up with
Right.
doing the thing,
Right.
then we don't know.
Right.
And I think I began just being swept up, right,
Yep.
at different stages. And
Of course, we all.
and thankfully, I do believe in some divine intervention here or guidance to have things show up in our life to give us the opportunity to stop, to breathe, to ground, and to find our way home.
You have a life partner, what, 38 years you've been
Yeah.
married? Yeah. So it must be a special guy.
Oh my gosh, he is, I guess, to put up with me. But
No,
yeah, we were so young, and I think our journey, we've both grown. Luckily, always given each other space and time to do our work to find our way to where we are now. And yeah, long-term relationships are hard, and we're really good at raising kids, apparently. And or someone thought we were. And we are really good in partnering in that way. And yeah, I do feel gifted by the love that we've had for each other.
That's wonderful.
And all the waves we've ridden together. And yeah, it takes a lot of, I think, finding your place as an individual within that relationship.
That's right.
Yeah, and honoring
Yeah.
the differences.
That's right.
And continuing to do the journey together. Yeah, it's been a gift, and he's been he's definitely more content with life, whereas I've always been this edge feels tight, what's happening over here, or what's over there in Africa, and so he's really given a lot of space and understanding to my desire to continue to do whatever it is that I'm most interested in doing, and me for him too, but also he's kind of, he's a real grounding anchor for me.
That's good.
Yeah.
Nice.
He's a true Vermonter, salt of the earth kind of person. And
A real person. I think
Yes.
Vermonters just, there's something solid about them.
Yeah. And I'll often be I don't know. I am a Vermonter, but I'm also, I remember going to my mom and saying, why can't I just feel content? This was many years ago. I look at my sister and I'll be like, Carol's doing this and she seems so sad. And she's like, we're all different. That's just who you are. And those were the gifts of my mom to being you just do you. We can't always look out and think that person is, because they feel this way. We should.
Right.
But I think we do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's the
So
journey.
is there a part of your life that we haven't touched on, or anything you want to talk more about?
Well, I'll just say a little more about my trips to Africa, because
Yeah,
they've been big
absolutely.
lesson learners for me. And if I think about influences, when I first went to Africa, I was kind of okay, Mary, be prepared. You're going to the poorest villages. People are going to be suffering, and it's gonna hurt your heart. And then I went and found, of course, the most joyful people that I had met, and this again rose some curiosity in me, and stress and stress resilience has always been something that I've been curious about. Even in their container, I was like, well, what is stress for them, and why? And I would ask a lot of questions of the people I got to know, and their frame of reference was that if their basic needs were being met, then those were their only stresses.
Yes.
Whereas we have so many
Food,
that we
housing.
create.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Right.
If someone in the family was sick,
Yeah.
Yeah, but if they had food, shelter, and love, you know, they
Life is good.
and they also like to laugh at things as much as they can. So they really taught me so many things, the people of Africa. And I remember going, and they also had, like, the other thing I think that brought them so much joy was that they all felt a sense of belonging, and that they played a role in the community. So community and connection. And I remember going and walking into this one clinic, and a nurse I had gotten to know was holding a baby, and she said, "Mary, look at my baby." And I said, "Shallon, I didn't know you had a baby." She said, "Well, I didn't have the baby, but my sister did, or my second cousin did, you know." And so when someone has a child there, they all care for it. It kind of goes back to how I felt in my community growing up.
Yes,
You know,
yes.
people really were there and had the time to be there for each other.
Wow.
And also when I was feeling so heavy about the turn my life had taken, and I was making one of my last trips there, I said to this little nurse midwife, I said, I can't keep coming because this thing has happened in my family, and I have, you know, my 4 grandchildren. And she was like, "Oh my goodness, you have 4 more grandchildren that are living with you?" And she's like, "Oh, so many people to take care of you." Like, their perspective was so different. And I was like, oh, well, part of me was like, that's not really how it works in our country. But their joy for me about something that I felt burdened with was like, oh my goodness, I haven't lost anything. I've only gained these 4 humans in my life.
See that.
Yes, and that was their perspective.
Wow.
So I always often go back to them, to their perspective as a grounding point for me.
Are you able to stay in touch with any of them?
Yeah, I'm still, well, I just stepped off the board, but I'm going to be doing a little bit of quality work over there. Now that the kids are older, I'm going to be able to travel over again. And yeah, I do keep in touch with the core group there. And yeah, it's been amazing work, and it's so, honestly, so rewarding to go, because they're just something we've lost a little. They're just so grateful and curious to receive whatever. You give them a book, and it's like you've given them gold, because education is the path forward for them.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, we're as a side, you know, the ultrasound became like the tool that we brought, but it became about so much more than that. It was just a magnet to talk about. To talk about so many other things, along with you know, mentoring and empowering the youth. I brought some teenagers over from here, some high school students from CVU, and we met up with a group of high school students there, and we talked about, you know, it was about ultrasound, but we talked about pregnancy and teen pregnancy, and sort of just about the risks of that, and really understanding how the body's maybe not ready for that. And we learned about their cultural, you know, barriers around beliefs. Even though they had access to contraception and for family planning, they still had a lot of pressure from elders to show up in certain ways. So, and also we learned from the young girls that they didn't necessarily have mentors to make them think they were worthy of going on to become a nurse or a doctor, even if they had the means. So that led to other work, and honestly bringing teenagers from here, and my son went a couple times, and it's like planted seeds in him too, that, you know, it's just beautiful to impact the life and the perception of young people. Yeah.
Wow.
And I always love working with students, because they always keep me like also a student.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which is also why I teach yoga, because that always keeps me a student.
Lifelong
too.
learning.
Yeah,
Yes.
for sure.
What are your kids, you talked about your daughter and her struggles. What are the other 2 doing as they're adults now?
Yeah, so my son, Jesse, he just finished his graduate work at UVM, and he'd really like to work in public policy, but he got he's right now the assistant dean of admissions at a college in North Carolina. He and his girlfriend, who is the coach of the volleyball team there, and he helps coach. And they actually, they love it there. It's a lot like Vermont, where they are. It's like a ski town in North Carolina. Who'd have known? I wouldn't have known. And not too far from Asheville, but they got hit really hard by that hurricane. Yeah, but they're rebuilding. But he would love to make his way back to Vermont. It's hard to afford to live here and to get work here. But I know he loves it here. He's he's just interested in so many things. I love having him around, and you know, to his credit, when he left, it was really hard. I think he hung around and did his colleges here to support Bob and I, because he was like 6. There's 10 years between my oldest and him. We had that last lingering child because I was like, well, I don't want to be that young and not have anyone at home. Little did I know.
Little did you know.
And my other daughter, she and her family live in South Carolina. They're here visiting right now.
Nice.
Yeah, so she has 2 children, and interestingly, her husband works remotely for UVM, but in IT, and she got a global business. She's one that has explored the earth. She could write a book early on. She traveled around a lot, but she is right now has a practical job working for a insurance company until she can, as she's raising her little kids. But they moved to South Carolina, so that's what they're up to. And then we'll see what my 4 grandchildren end up. I have 6 grandchildren actually, and but 4 that live with me.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, as we close the interview, is anything you want to say? Any words of wisdom you'd like to impart to the audience?
Well, I think we've been talking a lot about staying true to yourself. Yeah. So I would say build your toolkit with those things that that you like to do and that help you help build your resiliency. Really, I mean, I think a big thing is like being in your body and listening to this innate intelligence that we have. So you can feel the discomfort and be curious and have tools to explore that. And then, you know, once you get aligned, make your choices that align with that. And if you're confused, just go for a walk outside. Look around, take a few breaths of air, and let that be your journey, your guide to your journey home.
Yeah. Sounds great. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. It's
honored
been
to have
fun.
you on the show.
Thank you. Honored to be here.
Thank you.